My name is Beekman Webb, and I was born in Beaufort, lived here pretty much all my life, other than a few travels for different lengths of time.
Can you tell me about what it was like being a teenager here and spending time out on the water?
Well, in my young childhood, my dad was always in the river. That was what there was to do recreationally around here in those days, and so we did a lot of fishing and that sort of thing, and we went down to the camps, mostly on Pritchard's Island. That was the oldest camp down there. And then when I got to be about 10 years old, my dad gave me a skiff, and we pretty much were, I was and my friends, our parents just cut us loose in the river, you know, and I guess they thought it was safer than the streets. I don't know, it probably was, but, or it is now anyway. Anyway, we, first we started camping on a little hummock that's down just the other side of where the McTier Bridge is now. We started camping on that little hummock, and then one of the boys that was in our group, Jim Kinghorn, his parents owned Capers Island down off of Trunkett's Inlet, so we started camping down there, and we were much too young for driver's licenses, and so they would take us down and launch the boat, you know, and then they'd come pick us up on Sunday or whenever we were due to be back. And then in about 1961 or so, the Kinghorn sold Capers Island, so we had to find another place, and we wanted to build our own camp anyway.
About how old were you then?
In 61, I guess I was about 13 maybe. And so we found out who owned Bay Point Island, and it was a woman from New York State. And we called her up and asked if we could build a camp. We found a great spot right inside of Gale Break Inlet. And so we called her and asked her if she'd let us build a camp, and she said sure, she would make us the caretakers of the island. So from 61 till about 64, 65, they sold the island to the Pool Knots and the McLeods from Charleston, and so we were the caretakers until they bought it, and then they let us keep our camp there. But we built, initially, J.B. Kinghorn gave us a little summer house that was here in town on the sitting on the seawall over behind their house, and so we was about 16 by 20, and we jacked it up and got it down over the seawall and put it on 55-gallon drums, and we towed it down to Bay Point. And Bay Point's about 14 miles from Beaufort, and we towed it down there, and then we didn't have any way to get it up on the bank, you know, we just couldn't, we didn't have any equipment, machinery, anything. So we wound up taking it apart and using the parts to build our camp, you know, using the materials. And we built a dock. Everything we built, we scrounged the materials. My whole high school years, during the week, we would find materials and plan our weekend, and then we'd leave Friday night and come back Sunday night, and we'd work on the camp. And we built a dock first, then we built one room, then we added another room, we built an outhouse, and we had a great time. Anyway, it was, you know, every weekend, it was rare we didn't go. In the summer, we'd stay a week at a time, and our whole time during high school. And of course, we always took stuff to eat, but there was so much. I mean, there were plenty of oysters and clams all winter, that was available. There were a lot of ducks in those days, and we hunted ducks in the ponds over at St. Philip's Island. We knew how to get into the ponds over there, and so we would mostly we would just slip in, and if there was some ducks on the pond, we'd jump them and get a shot there. But of course, of large ducks, it only really took one or two for our group, and but we and marsh hens, clapper rails, we ate those, and we also fished. But our fishing was more in those days. We saw it as commercial. It wasn't so commercial because we never did sell much, but we fished for drumfish. That was kind of in the spring, we always set drumfish trot lines. And of course, we would occasionally catch trout or bass or something like that. But there are a lot of fish still to be caught around here.
Before you mentioned about spiking, and I hadn't heard that term
Striking.
before. Striking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, striking is, some people call it gigging, spearing fish at night with a light. And you need a dark night there's not much wind. And we would mostly go on an incoming tide, and flounder in the summertime is what you mostly get in the warm weather. And then the wintertime, you can strike bass or trout. You occasionally find a flounder in the cool weather, but mostly it was bass and trout in the winter. And we'd use a Coleman lantern for light, and people use electric lights now, but that was what we used then. We spent a lot of time just exploring the islands and wandering on the beach, and there was nobody. In those days, you could stay a week down at Bay Point Island and not see anybody. And we also had an old car. My uncle had given us a '55 Chevy, and we welded double wheels on the back and carried it down, borrowed a little barge, and took it down and put it on the beach. And we had that down there for about a year until somebody rolled it. You had to kind of jump our camp was on the back of the island, and there really wasn't any way to get back there other than jump the sand dune, and so somebody got a little heavy on the speed jumping one time and rolled the car. But that was fun while it lasted.